Hello. Welcome to book club. I am super late to my own event, but I'm always saying that we're not late or early. We're exactly when we're supposed to be. Using my own words against me there, but welcome. Honestly, if I wasn't late, I wouldn't be who I am. I was born late. It's just unfortunately a thing that I do. I'm working on it though, because we're all here to grow and be better, and you never really hit perfection. You keep working, but you never get there. Anyways, so our first book club, it's all about The Alchemist, which I hope you read it. If you didn't, it's only 4 hours on Audible. If you have Audible, I love it. And so it's all about inspiration. It's an inspirational story about living your destiny and chasing your dreams, and it's just, I love this story. So inspirational. So let me start out with a few announcements. Every Thursday is going to be book club. The time might change based on when I'm working, but I'll announce it in advance. And make sure you always bring coffee, because what's book club without coffee? I'm not expecting really too many people to jump on this week, but we're going to move to Zoom eventually and have like live Zoom call discussions, make it fun and interesting. Everybody can throw opinions in. So I guess we'll just dive in here, because it's such a great story and there's so much to cover, and we could cover literally sentence by sentence of this book, but we're not going to do that. We're just going to hit some key points. Alright, so let me give you a quick summary if it's been a while since you read it, or if you didn't read it. But if you didn't read it, I'll try to give you like spoiler alert moments where you know to shut down and not listen for a couple minutes, or to just jump off, so I don't ruin anything, because it's such a good story. But so we start the book out in a church in Spain under a sycamore tree, because the church is abandoned, and this shepherd boy named Santiago is just chilling out in this church for a couple days, and while he's there, he's having this recurring dream. So he's not a normal shepherd boy. He was educated. He went to study the priesthood, and then he decided he didn't want to be a priest. He wanted to travel. So he's living his dream right now of traveling, and he's got this recurrent dream going on while staying in this church. So he heads into town and he meets this gypsy woman who tells him basically what his dream means. And his dream is a boy takes him to the pyramids and tells him that there's treasure. So the woman interprets the dream very literally, that he needs to go to the pyramids to find some treasure. So he doesn't buy it. He thinks it's all a scam. So he goes his way, and later on that day, he meets the king of Salem. And they get talking. The king of Salem basically tells him that the world has the biggest lie that people tend to believe, and that's that as people get older, they lose control of their futures, and their lives are directed only by fate. That's the world's biggest lie. So the king tells him all about personal legends, and says when you want something, all the universe conspires to help you achieve it. I love that line. It's like a common theme throughout the whole book. And so the boy at this point is like convinced that this dream is real, so he sells off all of his sheep to his friend who actually really wanted his sheep. So coincidence? I think not. And he turns around and he takes off for Africa. So he crosses the water, gets into Africa, meets somebody that he thinks is going to help him, because he just learned that the universe will conspire to help him. But what happens, the guy he meets is actually a thief and steals all of his money. So he's like heartbroken, wants to give up, but he has no money. So he has this deal with a shop owner that he's going to work in the crystalware shop until he makes enough money to go back home and rebuy his sheep and just kind of eat the cost of what happened and go back to his old life. Well, him and the shop owner hit it off, and he spends a year there working for him, and in this year, the business booms. It goes crazy, and it's all thanks to Santiago because he does all this work and all this innovation and has all these good ideas. So at the end of the year, Santiago is finally ready. He's got all of his money. He wants to go back to Spain, and something nudges him, and he's like, it's not gonna hurt to just walk over there and see what it would cost to go to the pyramids. So he ends up continuing his journey to the pyramids, and he takes off across the desert in this caravan with this Englishman that he met. So there's tribal wars going on in the desert, but they make it safely to the oasis, and once he gets to the oasis, he interprets this omen with the hawks that ends up saving hundreds of lives. He meets his soulmate, Fatima, and he finds the alchemist. This is where he finds the alchemist. So the alchemist, by definition, is somebody who transforms one thing into another thing. So in the book, it would be like transforming iron into gold. So the alchemist kind of takes Santiago under his wing, he becomes his student. So they leave the oasis, leave his soulmate and all that good fortune he's had there, and he sets off to finish his journey across the desert and get to the pyramids. So while he's out with the alchemist, he's learning things about reading the signs in the world, and one day they get captured by a tribe, one of the tribes that are at war, and he's forced to converse with the soul of the world so that he can turn himself into the wind and save his life. And he actually is successful at it. So he saves his life, and then he goes on in his journey. He finds the pyramids. Ooh, it's too late now, but I should have given you spoiler alerts way back. Oops, sorry. So he finds the pyramids, and when he gets there, if you haven't gotten to this point in the book, now's the time I'm going to give you a spoiler alert. So he gets there, he's digging for his treasure, and what happens? These guys show up, they beat him up, and they tell him that dreams are for fools, and that the guy who beats him up had a dream like a year ago or something, I can't remember the timeline, but he had a dream that there was buried treasure under a sycamore tree in an abandoned church in Spain. So Santiago finally is like, there's my treasure. And he wasn't disappointed or upset. He was just, yes, now I know where it is. Because in his dream, he could never get to the point where he actually knew where it was. He just knew something about the pyramids. So he heads back to Spain, finds his treasure in the church, and lives, we assume, happily ever after with his love of his life, Fatima. The end of the story. Okay, so there's obviously a lot more to it than that, but those are the main plot lines. So if I was going to summarize this in one line, I would say something like, personal legends are the only means by which we can live a fulfilled life, and in order to achieve that legend, we have to undergo transformation. I think transformation is the key word. That was the one word that I would use to describe this book. So let's dive into some lessons and themes, because it's such a good book. We can learn so much from this. Even though it's a fictional story and it's not made up, we're not going to turn into the wind, but a lot of good lessons here. So, you might not have known this, but the king of Salem, his name was Melchizedek, and that name actually breaks down into Malik and Zedek, which literally translates into Malik meaning king and Zedek meaning Salem, both of which mean righteousness or peace. So he's just about to start out on his personal journey, and he's visited by the king of righteousness or the king of peace, who's telling him basically to find your peace, you gotta go on this journey. And I definitely think that's true, because how much regret do we have for not doing things that we felt we should have done? We lose a lot of peace over that, I think. So there's definitely a consistent theme of connectivity, where all things are connected through the soul of the world. They talk a lot in the book about the soul of the world. Everything needs to live its personal legend, and to do that, it has to tap into the soul of the world. So the alchemist uses that to make metal into gold. But alchemy is a symbol. The alchemy itself ends up being a symbol for Santiago's journey and his transformation. So as he's pursuing his personal legend, he's being transformed by the soul of the world, which we all need to do. Not the term the soul of the world, interpret that how you will, but as we're all on our journey, we have to transform. We can't. I'll get to it in a minute. I'm getting out of order with my themes. I'm rushing. So he's on his journey, and he's becoming more and more the person who's at the end of his journey and figured it all out and achieved his legend, and that's who he's trying to be and where he's trying to get to. So alchemy for him is internal transformation into becoming that person. And that's really important, that theme of transformation is so important, because we don't wake up one day in our dream life. We have to evolve and grow, which happens as we walk our personal journeys. So for me, one day I want to have a farm, and I grew up on a homestead, so I know about caring for animals, but I don't know about owning having employees and having to pay for their health care, and I don't know about reaching out to stores to sell your products, and I have a lot to learn. I can't just wake up tomorrow and somebody gives me a farm. I have to kind of evolve into the person that can do that, right? Who can live that dream. So every day we get a little closer to becoming the person who can achieve that life. And if Santiago had actually gotten to the pyramids in a few days and not been robbed and forced to go on this whole 2-year journey, he would have never found his treasure. He had to go through those 2 years of transformation, because had he gotten to the pyramids in a week without any struggle or growth, he wouldn't have met the man who told him his dream about the treasure being at the church. So it's not just getting where we want to get, but getting there in the right timing. So it's not just where, but it's also when. Which brings up the next point. Why was his treasure not at the pyramids? Why was it at the church? Why did they take him all the way to the pyramids just to get back to the church? And like I said, the treasure itself is the journey and the transformation. Who you are at the end, that is your treasure. Unless you're looking for real treasure, which he did actually find, but so who he is at the end of his journey is his real treasure and his real goal. So it wouldn't have done him any good to get there early. So by taking action, and not just being passive, but actually taking action and going places and doing things, we're transforming, and in that transformation we're getting closer to our dreams. Ooh, next point. The symbol of his sheep. So he talks about his sheep a lot throughout the book, but mostly in the beginning he really gives you a sense of how he feels about them. Oh, it's such a powerful symbol. So his sheep symbolize the sort of existence lived by those who are blind to their personal legends, like the baker, for example. So while Santiago loves his sheep, cares for his sheep, he does have a little bit of disrespect for them, because they just kind of care about basic survival. They don't really appreciate the beauty of the creation around them. They just kind of go where he takes them and have no cares about it. So he's aware that his sheep are like this, and that they are so blindly trusting of him, just going wherever he takes them, that he actually says he could turn against them and slaughter like all of them before they would even notice. If that doesn't make you go like, wow. Because how many, like, I know society has talked a lot about the woke generation and being aware of, like, waking up from the ignorance of the rat race, and there's a lot of different books that have perspectives on it, but really, like, the day you realize that you're not just at the whim of fate and you have power to make choices in your life that direct your life, it's a powerful day. So different characters throughout the book are similar to the sheep, like the baker. The baker is so caught up in his day-to-day existence that he doesn't see a larger picture. Okay, let's move on to the symbol of the desert. Ooh, so important. The desert itself in the book is a symbol for the difficulties that we have to go through in order to transform and grow and reach our personal legends. And I wish I'd have wrote the quote down, but the Alchemist said at one point something like, without the desert, you'd never achieve your personal legend. And what that means is, without difficulties, you won't become who you need to be. And a lot of speakers say similar things to that. We grow in times of hardship, not in times of ease. That's when we do most of our growth. So chasing your personal legend is gonna be a desert. It's not gonna be a walk in the park. But if you believe the book and the king, the universe will conspire to help you. Sorry, talking a lot. I need a break. So, Santiago comes to realize that the desert that he once thought was barren wasteland actually helps him to get this really deep connection with the soul of the world. So even in his desert, he's growing, he's connecting, and he's gonna find his destiny. So anyone else have some experience already with a desert in their life? I know I have. I've had some times with something was like nothing good was gonna come out of it, and then on the other end it was like, oh yeah, I really grew and learned a lot in that period. Leave me a comment, let me know. And I love that they're talking so much about this communion with the world, and not the materialistic world, but the natural world. Because it's really a good lesson about spending time in nature. Love spending time in nature. Some of you may have come to this group because you saw my posts about nature. And I'm a firm believer in the healing power of it. If you've got a lot of like just chaos and anxiety going on, and you're like, oh, I feel like the world's just gonna end, like you get so, I don't know how to describe it, but you just feel like there's so much chaos right now, your world's gonna end. Those are the best times to go camping or to take a hike or to just go fishing, because I don't know how it works, but it just helps put things in perspective that the world is not really ending. And sorry, it's really hot in here. And yeah, so nature is very healing and really helps to clarify the mind and get rid of all that chaos, which in turn will help you focus on what's important to getting where you need to be. And we don't get there without some sacrifice, though, do we? Santiago, the very first sacrifice he had to make was 10% of a treasure he didn't even believe in. Right? And then he had to sacrifice his mediocratic life. I don't know if that's a word. So that he could chase this dream. And then, to get there, he had to make another sacrifice and 10% of his sheep. But then he had to go even farther, and he ended up selling all of his sheep. He also gave up this nice girl that was in town, whose name we will never know, so that he could go chase these extraordinary things. But not only did he make all of his money back with the merchant and have the ability to go back to his old life, so he actually made that sacrifice twice. I don't know if you picked up on that, but he makes this sacrifice to chase his dreams and give up his lifestyle. And then loses everything, has to start from scratch, and when he gets to a point where he can go back to that safety net of his old life, he sacrifices that again so that he can keep going on his journey. So he sacrifices the safety of his old life as a shepherd, actually twice in this book. So don't be surprised if when you start out you have to give up certain things, and then later on you feel like you have to recommit to that. I know sometimes I feel like I have to consistently keep recommitting to things. And to spin off on that, to spin onto the financial part of that, this is a unpopular opinion, I'm well aware of that, but I'm a big believer in paying your 10% tithes. Big believer. So he goes to the gypsy woman wants 10% of his treasure. The sheep, he has to give Melchizedek 10% of his sheep. Why 10%? I don't know why 10%. I think the Bible says 10%, so this story, there's a lot of different points in the story that kind of come directly from the Bible, and so maybe that's why it's 10%, but regardless of the number, not only my opinion, but lots of successful millionaires who have worked up from the bottom, they all say the same thing. It is so important that you are giving some of that success back. And not just once you get success, not just once you hit that mark, but from the very beginning. I have been giving to charity since I couldn't even keep my utilities on, and they were shut off because I was so poor. Okay? I still had to give to charity. And every year, my income got better and better and better and better, and now I'm up to 6 figures. So, I'm a big believer in paying your tithes. A lot of millionaires will tell you that. Santiago had to pay his 10% both before and after he reached his success. He had to pay 10% of his sheep at the beginning and 10% of his treasure at the end. I think that's a very important theme, but I know that's a very unpopular opinion. A lot of people argue that with me. In fact, I've never met anybody in real life who's like, yeah, I agree with you. But I've seen the effects of it in my own life. Whatever higher power you believe in, the universe, God, whoever, it multiplies and it comes back to you. If you give to help others, the universe will give more back. And at the end of the book when the alchemist gives gold to the priest who let them use the kitchen. The priest is like, well, this is way more than I need or deserve. And he's like, shh, don't say that. The universe will hear you and give you less next time. It's true. Don't tempt the universe. Receive blessing. Be willing to receive blessing. Don't put limits on it, because you can get a whole lot more than you think you originally can. So the word maktub comes up a lot in the book, and it translates, according to the Crystal Merchant, into "it is written." And what that means is your fate, your destiny, your life, if you choose to pursue it and walk it, it's all written. And Santiago actually finds a lot of reassurance in that, and he uses that to keep him going. Because if he's committed to walking his personal legend, or his destiny, or his fate, whatever you want to call it, then he trusts that it's already written down, it's already worked out. He just has to walk it. And it's not always easy. We already talked about that. It's not always going to be easy. But he just has to walk it. It's already written. And he uses that as like reassurance. And I definitely do that in my life. There are times when things work out that definitely should not have worked out. And I use that as reassurance that, oh, I just gotta keep going here. So the omens are a big part of this book. They're constantly talking about omens. Do you believe in omens in real life? I definitely believe that things will talk to us, like our bodies, when they're not healthy, will talk to us and tell us things before we end up in the hospital. I definitely think our cars will give us little warnings that we need maybe to do some maintenance before that expensive mechanic trip. Our relationships in life have little warning flags sometimes that you need to give some more attention or something. You could call those omens, I suppose, maybe, but there's definitely warning signs in our lives that we should heed. And the omens represent another thing for Santiago, because if you notice throughout the story, they get more powerful. So in the beginning, there's simple things like when the stones fell out of his pocket in the marketplace after he had been robbed. But later on, he sees a hawk right before this assault on the oasis, and he ends up saving hundreds of people. So the progression of the strength of the omens is also a symbolic parallel with the transformation of his journey that he's on and his own growth. Ooh, I'm at my last point I made. It's all about the danger of fear. Oh my gosh. I saved this for last because it is the most important. Fear is the enemy. I say it again and again and again. Fear is the enemy. It will, yeah, it's like survival, but your brain is hardwired for survival, not happiness and success. So it's going to try to keep you from taking risky action, but you can't achieve high levels of success without taking some risk. There's going to be risk always. It's not always going to be easy. Your brain doesn't like that, so it's going to trigger you with fear. But fear is the enemy. Okay, so Santiago has to overcome fear a lot on his journey. And in the book, the weaker characters are portrayed to be fearful, and the characters that overcome fear are portrayed to be stronger, the ones who kind of disregard it and keep going anyways. So I know it sucks, I know it's hard, but So the crystal merchant, as far as we know, he's never going to reach his personal destiny of going to Mecca. And once he gets there, his life could be completely transformed and better than ever. But he doesn't know that. He's afraid of what'll happen after he takes that step. Okay? He can't see the whole way to the end of his life if he takes that step and goes to Mecca, and that scares him. It scares him that he doesn't know that. But he knows if he doesn't go to Mecca, things will probably just keep going the way they are, and he's content. Like, he's not happy, but he's content with his existence. Do we really want to live like that, content with our existence? So, crystal merchant, as far as we know, will always be unhappy and full of regret. So on Santiago's journey, the first glimpse of fear we see from him is the gypsy woman. He had expressed he was like trembling. He was so afraid. So he had to overcome that fear in order to get his dream interpreted. And then he was afraid of losing his successful lifestyle that he had. He was doing pretty well as a shepherd. He liked it. He had met a nice little girl and could have settled down and been happy, but more like content with existence. But he conquers that fear and decides to leave Spain. And then again, he has to conquer fear to cross the desert. And then, in the desert, he faces battle. That must have been terrifying. And then I think the biggest fear he came across would have been when he had to make himself into the wind or be dead. I can't imagine the kind of terrifying pressure that would be, to do something that you think's impossible. But how many things do we come across in life that we think are impossible and they're actually not? I'm not saying we're going to all turn into the wind, but I love the meaning behind this plot in the book, because there's a lot of things we think are impossible and they're actually not. You know, we want to be millionaires, or we want to overcome our depression. There was a time when I didn't think that was going to be possible for me. And a lot of people give into that reality that they'll never recover because they don't. They become statistics. Or look at the people who have started worldwide charities, but they started out from nothing. Or even just something like going back to school. Some people think that that's just not an option for them. Why? Why are we limiting ourselves? Anything is an option for anybody if you're willing to go through the motions and work for it. That's the thing. They're impossible while staying where you're at. I'm going to say that again. The life we dream of is only impossible if we're staying where we're at. But really, it's possible if you're willing to work for it. Other people can do it. You can too. Everybody always says, well, that's just for somebody else, but why? You know what makes that person different? They didn't say that. They didn't say, oh, that's just impossible for me. They said, how can I make that possible? Alright, so I know there's a lot more that we could talk about in the book, but I'm not going to drag on forever. I just want to wrap up a couple lessons. If you didn't get the point yet, fear is the enemy. Chasing your dreams is going to be hard. You're going to have to work. It's not always going to be easy. Sometimes it's going to suck. But getting to the end is ultimately worth it. We have to transform, we have to grow, we can't stay where we are. And the last little point I like is in the end he goes back home. He starts and ends the book in Spain. Everything comes full circle. And that personally was really nice for me because I'm in a period of life right now where I'm traveling a lot and I get homesick a lot. And it was just a really nice touch for me that he went away on this journey and had grand adventures, but he ended up back home. So for me, that was a nice little touch. Warmed my heart a little bit because that's kind of like where I'm at right now. But alright, well, that's all I had for our discussion. I could definitely keep going forever, but like I said, hope to start some Zooms in the future and actually get like feedback on what you think is important and the lessons from the story. Next week's book is gonna be Love Yourself Like Your Life Depends on It by Paulo Coelho. It's like his testimonial on how he overcame depression and learned to love himself again. And not that he hated himself. Like, I had self-loathing depression. That's not his story, okay? I hated everything about myself and my life and my existence. That's not his story. He had a story where he had to make decisions that were good for himself because he decided to love himself. So it's a really good book. I think it's also only 4 hours on Audible. Let me look it up real quick just to make sure. But that's what we're going to cover next week. And a lot of it, I love this book because I know it works. The strategies he gives people are the same strategies that I used in my recovery. So he went through recovery all on his own. I went through recovery all on my own. But we both came up with these same strategies. So I know they work. Title details. Yeah, it's 4 hours. Oops, that's my... I don't know why it's taking me to a podcast, but if you don't have Audible, I love it. So I know these stories work. Yeah, it's 4 hours. Okay. Paulo Coelho. Love Yourself Like Your Life Depends on It. That's next week's book. We're going to talk about all the strategies in it. They might not work for you, and I'm not telling you shouldn't get help because you should, but these are things that he did and I did and they worked. Maybe they can help you. Alright. Peace out, guys. Love you. And I won't be late next week.